Welcome to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and our coverage of the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. And it wouldn't be May if there wasn't rain, but thank God. This is the first and only time I'm probably going to say that this month. Thank God it's the road course because we can actually run in the rain. Of course, no track action today, but the Indy GP, as is tradition over the last 10 years, will start off the month of May, and then on May 14th, which is a Tuesday, if you're keeping track, we will begin the running on the oval in preparation for the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. So I want to make this video to kind of introduce those of you who maybe haven't been paying as much attention to IndyCar over the last 365 days, because there's an awful lot of storylines. Let's get across a couple of good news items. First and foremost, it sounds like that if it's not a total sellout, the Indianapolis 500 is going to have a very, very healthy crowd for the next time in several years here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We love to see the crowds coming out for the Indianapolis 500. It's always a good sign. 34 cars are entered here, 34 cars and drivers. Originally there was going to be a 35th, but Able Motorsports kind of late in the game had to pull out. There's a couple of different reasons for that. Originally, R.C. Anderson was going to enter the race. He couldn't come up with the sponsorship. Jacob Able, who is an Indy Next competitor, thought about joining the Indianapolis 500, but a part shortage in the series was the biggest deterrent in Able Motorsports not making either of their entries happen for this year. But much like last year, it's going to be a very dramatic bump day because one car and one driver will be going home from the 33-car field. But unfortunately, if you haven't been paying attention to IndyCar in recent months, or really the last 6 months, it certainly is a tumultuous time in this series. A bit of a dark cloud hanging over the series, and questions about the legitimacy of the competition, unfortunately, have been brought up as well. If you haven't been paying attention, the big news story over the last several weeks has been the fact that Joseph Newgarden, who was the apparent winner of the St. Petersburg Grand Prix, was disqualified from that event, as well as teammate Scott McLaughlin. It was discovered that the team had access to push-to-pass, which is a system that is utilized only on the road courses in this series when they were not allowed to have that access. Push-to-pass gives the team extra revs in the engine, extra horsepower, and allows it to be easier for a car behind to pass a car ahead. Newgarden and Team Penske were found to be in violation of that. They were disqualified, fined by the series, and even Team Penske themselves has stepped in and suspended 4 crew members from the team, including president of Penske Racing, Tim Cindric. They're suspended for the entire month of May, meaning a significant penalty, really, in terms of the competition side of Team Penske for this month of May and for the defense of Joseph Newgarden. Unfortunately, that's not the only issue kind of surrounding IndyCar. You may have remembered the finish to last year's Indianapolis 500. A lot of questions marks surrounding that and the last lap shootout off of a red flag. The understanding that I have, first reported by Tony Donahue, I verified his source. This information is correct. IndyCar fully intends to end this race under the green flag, and it seems like through any means necessary. So the real question mark is going to be, do you have a situation like we saw last year where not only you have 3 red flags in a row, but you might also have a one-lap shootout situation where the leader essentially is going to end up being a sitting duck. And certainly Marcus Ericsson, of all people, but certainly some folks in the stands and throughout the paddock have had questions about that. The one thing that has changed rule-wise from last year, in a good way, is that you will no longer see drivers weaving underneath the pit entry line and into the pit entrance to try to break the draft. That has been banned this year, although, of course, that could factor into the finish of the race. As we've seen in restrictor plate racing in NASCAR, you might end up with someone going underneath a line, and then potentially the question mark becomes, when is a win taken away? Other kind of meta issues have also been facing IndyCar recently. Charter agreement is on the table right now. While it's not signed, and certainly the team owners and Roger Penske and Penske Entertainment have been going back and forth about what will specifically be put into this charter agreement. If you don't know what a charter is, it's much like a franchise in the National Football League or the NBA. And traditionally, when you see these sorts of agreements, In racing, it means that when you have a charter, you have a spot guaranteed for the entire year. Of course, that would be a significant breaking of tradition. We've seen that tradition broken once before here in the past at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, namely 1996 and 1997, when the 25-8 rule existed. Now, that rule has been off the books since the end of 1997, but the team owners very much want locked-in spots to the Indianapolis 500. They've wanted it for a while. Penske Entertainment, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and IndyCar, to their credit, do not want that. So the question is going to be, who budges first? There's a question mark about what the month of May in its format in 2025 will look like. So certainly that's something to look to the future of. Mark Miles had mentioned that he wants the charter agreement agreed to and announced by May of this year. So we might have an answer to that question before the end of the month. And finally, there's been a lot of dissent in the paddock. Honda in December of last year made a pretty bold statement to Racer.com, stating essentially the fact that they're unhappy with the direction of IndyCar and where it's going and their return on investment, and threatened if things don't change, they would be in a position to leave the series. Other team owners, namely Michael Andretti, though several others have expressed displeasure. Michael Andretti went as far as to suggest that Roger Penske should sell the IndyCar series. So there's a lot of things hanging over this series right now that unfortunately are going to help paint the picture, for better or for worse, throughout this month of May. And, if you enjoy the Indianapolis 500, if you enjoy IndyCar, and you like the current way the Indianapolis 500 is, enjoy this year because, personally, this is a personal opinion of mine, there's a chance that this race and this series will look significantly different by the time we get back here in 2025. But for now, there are a ton of great storylines. Like we say, 34 teams, 34 cars, and 34 drivers, and every single one of them have a story. And throughout this month, we're planning on telling most of those. But here's a few highlights going into this month if you haven't been paying attention the last 365 days. Of course, we already touched on Joseph Newgarden. Certainly a lot of controversy surrounding him after the push to pass disqualification, but the point remains, he is the defending champion of this Indianapolis 500, and he'll be looking to defend that championship. And of course, he was fast here in the April test. Typically, when you're fast in the April test, it translates to May. So we'll see once they get out on the oval track if Joseph Newgarden can mount a staunch title defense. Kyle Larson, of course, the NASCAR points leader right now and the 2021 Series champion, a driver who so many people, including the late Robin Miller, really wanted to run the Indianapolis 500. He's running it this year for Arrow McLaren. He'll be in car number 17, supported by HendrickCars.com, his sponsor in the NASCAR Cup Series. He'll be the first driver to do the double, which is the Coke 600 in NASCAR, as well as the Indianapolis 500 in the same day since Kurt Busch did it 10 years ago in 2014. So obviously Kyle Larson with a great shot at victory in his first Indianapolis 500, and we expect a driver with an open wheel background kind of coming up the way drivers like AJ Foyt and Tony Stewart came up and ran in Indy cars. So it's great to see Kyle Larson here. Graham Rahal was really the center of intention throughout the month last year, getting bumped from the field but being added to the field after a teammate, Catherine Legg, crashed into Stephen Wilson, injuring him. Graham Rahal was named as the replacement. He rolled off 33rd, but unfortunately a battery issue took him out of the field. So a very tumultuous month for Graham Rahal. He's looking for redemption. Alex Palou, the IndyCar champion from last year, won the series, won the points championship, and has had a fast car every year he's come here. But he's yet to win the Indianapolis 500. I think Alex Palou certainly, that's the box that he is yet to check in this series and is going to be going all out to win the race. And you got to expect, if he's been fast the last few years with very few technical changes in terms of the regulations, that Palou will be just as fast as he always is. Marcus Ericsson, the bridesmaid last year, the bride the year before, very much looked like he was going to become a two-time repeat winner of the Indianapolis 500. He's with Andretti Autosport this year, which is quite a significant change from his Ganassi team of last year. But Andretti Autosport, particularly on the super speedways, has been on the up and up. Kyle Kirkwood and Colton Herta were top 10 contenders in last year's Indianapolis 500. So it would stand to reason that Marcus Ericsson is only going to improve that team, and I would expect him to run at the front towards the end of the race. And it wouldn't be an Indy 500 video without mentioning AJ Foyt. Santino Ferrucci finished third in the race last year, the best finish A.J. Foyt's had here since Kenny Breck won the race for them in 1999. Santino was absolutely a contender for victory last year with engineer Michael Cannon, who returns this year. I think we fully expect the A.J. Foyt team, and particularly Santino Ferrucci in that red, white, and blue number 14, to be running up at the front Memorial Day weekend. So there's a lot of storylines going into this month of May. The Grand Prix is this weekend. We have great coverage of that. We've already talked to a few drivers about the strategy and potential ways that someone can win a road course race here. But obviously the meat and potatoes of the Indianapolis 500 is that coverage on the oval. And I like to think that we have the best, not only on YouTube, but maybe across the board. So we hope to see you guys here. If you did get to the end of this video, you should probably subscribe, because if any of that interested you, we're going to be covering all those storylines significantly. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. It is finally on May 9th here, the month of May. Wheels turn tomorrow, although they'll be going in the wrong direction. May 14th, oval racing starts, and we can't wait. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.